Well, Iruka, welcome to the podcast. I'm very excited to have this chat with you today.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here.
Good. So let's start off. I think you might have known this was coming, the 10 quick fire questions
I
to
have heard
break
these on previous casts, yes.
to break the ice. So before we go into number one, can you just share your name as your first name or your whole name, whatever you want to share?
Yeah,
Your age, if you don't mind sharing your age, and what you do.
sure. So I'm Iruka. I am 44 and I am a GP.
Awesome. First fire question. If you could only eat one type of food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, goodness. It would have to be carbohydrates in any form. Um, so yeah, one type of food. So chips, donuts, bread, carbohydrate based, it would have to be. Everything
I'm with
else I could
you.
just about give up.
I'm with you on that. I would miss some fats and proteins,
Yeah,
definitely, but it had
absolutely.
to be carbs.
Yeah, if you had to choose, that would be the one.
Love that. What's your favorite song at the moment, if you have one?
Um, it's oh, what's her name? Her name's Sabrina Carter, I think. It's called Please, Please, Please.
Oh, I've not heard it.
Yeah, it's a really sweet song, but it's actually very funny because she's got this beautiful lilting voice where she's talking about asking this guy not to break her heart, but there's a hard edge to the song, and it's just really funny if you listen to it. I'm just listening to that at the moment. It's good to work out to as well. So recommend you look it up. It's
I
called
am,
Please, 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 and it's
I
really
will. I'm going to
yeah.
check that out because I don't listen to the radio, so I do miss the upcoming new
Yeah,
releases. So
new
I
track.
will check that out. Number three, if you could have a superpower for a day, what would you choose and why?
Superpower. Oh, I mean, this might be a double-edged sword, but it would be able to, it would be to be able to hear people's thoughts, especially children,
Mm,
um, because often kids, when they're upset, when they're crying, and they're not able to articulate how they feel, I'd love to be able to sort of see into their heads and see what they're actually saying, to to alleviate whatever concern it is that they have.
mm.
Um, so yeah, that or being invisible, and just being able to hang out wherever I like.
Oh,
That would be
I've never
lovely.
heard the first one before. That's a beautiful
Mm,
one. I can see why you
mm.
chose that one.
Yeah, yeah, especially with kids. Don't need to know what's going on in adults'
No,
heads.
that why it could be a double-edged
Yeah,
sword, right?
yeah. But with kids, that would be a nice one.
That's
Yeah.
gorgeous. All right, number four, what's the most spontaneous thing you've ever done and did it turn out well?
Spontaneous thing. Um, Probably, I mean, I've not done it yet. I've booked tickets to things in the last couple of weeks. And that's quite spontaneous because typically I'm quite sensible and plan everything to death and just talk myself out of
Mm.
spontaneity. But just in recent months, I've been trying to be a bit more spontaneous. So I've booked. I might have told you about it. I've booked some tickets to an event in Bournemouth, and I'm going with my sister. I'm so looking forward to it. And old me would never have done that. I would always have talked myself out of it. It's too expensive, or it's too far away, it's too whatever. Um, but yeah, this time around, I've just made it happen, and my sister's really excited to go with me too. And yeah, we're gonna have a great weekend.
I'm
So
excited to hear how it goes because I'm excited for you as well.
I
I love
know, so
that.
it's not very exciting, but in terms of spontaneity, that's probably the most spontaneous thing I've done this year, anyway.
I love that. Okay, standard question, but I always love to know the answers to these type of questions. If you were going to a desert island and you could only take 3 items, what would you take?
Uh, 3 items. My music collection. Um, I don't know if that, in whatever form that is on my phone or whatever, and
Mhm.
something to listen to it with. 3 items. Food.
That's a smart choice,
Is
actually.
that is there food on this island? If not, I would need food. Um, and I'd need to take another person for company. But I don't know. I don't know who I'd take. I mean, I should say my husband, shouldn't I? I'd be very upset to hear if I said no. I'll take my best friend. Um, yeah, probably my husband for company and to talk to and all of that kind of stuff.
I love that. And it just shows the answer to that question shows what's important to you. So
Yeah,
your husband, your family, your music and how that
music.
makes you feel, and
Mm.
food, which is a
Yeah,
great thing to be
yeah,
valued.
yeah. I mean, if there's no food on the island, we're not gonna survive very long, are we? So I
No,
have to take that with me.
I
Mm.
love that. Okay. What's your favorite childhood memory that brings a smile to your face?
Ooh, yeah. Um, Probably hanging out with my siblings. I mean, no specific memory, just I'm from a large family. I'm one of five. So I've got two older, two younger. I'm in the middle. So growing up was fun. There was always somebody to do something with, play with, argue with, fight with. Um, so just hanging out, particularly with my sisters. I've got three sisters, one brother, but I'm very close with my sisters, and we're close now. So childhood memories are just, trips to the beach, trips to parties, visiting people, holidays, that kind of thing,
Hmm,
just with them, in any capacity or form. It's
love
probably
that.
enjoy
Family.
things. Yeah, yeah, family.
What's your favorite smell?
Oh, roses.
Mm.
Probably. Yeah, I'm obsessed with roses. Um, I've got no space left in the garden, but keep buying them.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Or do you have them in different colours as well?
yeah, yeah, different shapes, sizes, colors. I've got no space left, but I keep buying them and keep buying pots to put them in instead. So yeah, the smell of a good rose, just yeah, it
Hmm.
brings me a lot of joy. Mm.
Favorite sound?
Um, The sea is quite nice, although I don't get to hear it as often as I would like. But whenever I've been on holiday and just hearing the sea, that's lovely.
Mm.
Rain
Mm.
is really nice. My kids laughing, the sound of their
Yeah,
just pure giggling, laughing away. Yeah, probably those.
love
Yeah,
those.
kids would be top.
If you could go back to a time of your life and live it again, not necessarily differently, but just experience that time of your life again, does a
Mhm.
time of your life come to mind?
Experience it again.
Yes.
Okay. Goodness. Experience it differently. Yeah, maybe university. So in my late teens, early 20s, because I didn't have the best time. I was very insecure. I was doing a high pressure course, that was quite intense. Uh, and I was just, all over the place and just missed out on a lot of when I speak to friends or family who went to university and had a better time,
Mm.
I wish that I could have that time again and sort of go out more and enjoy myself more and have more experiences. So maybe I would revisit uni and just get drunk a bit more and, and go out a bit more. Maybe I wouldn't have passed my degree if I did
Yeah, I think you
that.
would have done.
Possibly would have had a bit more of a hedonistic time at uni.
Yeah, love that. And last question for the quick fire ones.
Mhm.
I'm going to just make one up on the spot that I feel called to ask you. Why did you say yes to sharing your story? Because I know it wasn't an immediate yes and you had to think
Mhm.
about that. So do you mind
Absolutely.
sharing why it was a yes in the end?
No, not at all. I don't mind at all. Yeah, I wanted to challenge myself. Part of this process has kind of enabled me to just be free in terms of doing new things or challenging myself to things that I wouldn't ordinarily do. Now got the sort of bandwidth or the brain space to consider these things. And the idea of being in a kind of public setting, talking about something that I've never really talked about to anybody apart from people very close to me, I find quite daunting. So that mere feeling of, oh, I don't want to do this, I've sort of looked at it and challenged myself as to why I don't want to do it, and I'm trying to challenge myself to do it.
And here you
Um,
are.
yes, exactly. So yeah, it's just an opportunity to challenge myself doing something that I'm not, 100% comfortable with, and seeing how I get on.
I love that. So let's dive into the main juice, one of my favorite words.
Yeah.
Can you share with us a bit about your background story? So, when did it start, your
Yeah.
relationship with food and your body, and then up to the point where you decided to reach out for support?
Hmm. Um, so it goes back as far as when I was very, very young. I was, I think, 9 or 10. I was always tall for my age and sort of bigger than average for my age. Um, so I remember back in primary school when I was 9, perhaps, doing PE and my PE kit not fitting properly. And all that had happened was that I'd probably grown or had a growth spurt. I just remember my PE top not fitting, my PE shorts not fitting properly or being tight. And just that's the first memory I have of being conscious of my body,
Mm,
um, and being conscious playing PE, just being uncomfortable in what I was wearing. And I just made the connection that, my body's getting bigger and that's not good. I'm getting fat and I need to do something about it. Um, so yeah, that was when I went on my first diet, if you like, or first attempt to try and shrink my body.
yeah.
Um, and sadly, the cycle of on the diet wagon, off the diet wagon, or diet binge began from there. Actually, sadly, uh, and right up until present. Well, until about 6 to 8 months ago, um, where I found you and found recovery. So in a nutshell, that's how it began.
Yeah. And
Um,
then you experienced that their cycle, like you shared. So it was the
mm,
restriction. What kind of dieting did you do? Was it a whole array of different things? Was it counting calories? Was it a club? Because I'm sure
yeah,
so many
sure.
people can relate to the dieting journey and then the binging and
Yes.
the dieting and that and that.
Yeah. I mean, in the early days, when I was very young, it was just restriction, just, trying to eat less or trying to
Mm,
eat what I thought was was healthy or that would help me lose weight. So no formal plan or anything like that. And I didn't join any because I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my mum. My mum would, I don't think she would ever have agreed to let me go to Weight Watchers or anything like that.
mm,
Um, so it was just that and exercising. Um, so that was in the sort of very early years. As I got older into my teens, and early 20s, a similar thing. I tried Slimming World, you know, in an online type forum. I never went to any formal classes. And I think I tried Weight Watchers, I tried Noom, just all the and then just, you know, online stuff, Cambridge diet, or I don't know, cabbage soup diet, you know, all that rubbish. Just basically, you know, restricting. My main method was probably counting calories, and just I would give myself a certain number of calories, you know, not based in any wisdom or science in terms of what my body needed. I just kind of said, right, you should eat, I don't know, 1,500. You know, for somebody my height, it's a ridiculous number, ridiculously low number,
Yeah.
especially being very active. And then I would do that. And then as I got older, there was some wisdom that would that came into things. I realized that severely restricting, you know, wasn't working. Denying yourself the foods that you love was probably not a good idea. So I would do the mild kind of restriction where I would allow myself all those things, and, you know, diet in moderation and all that kind of stuff. And it always baffled me as to why even that didn't work. Because I thought, well, I'm not restricting, you know, badly. I'm not denying myself anything. Yet, you know, the cycle, you know, to fall off the wagon, or the cycle would continue. And there was a lot of self-blame as to why can't I stick to this? You know, what's wrong with me? Why isn't this working? I'm not going to the extremes, so therefore, what's the problem?
Yeah. So did you find yourself trying to eat, let's say, chocolate or crisps or processed food in moderation, and then not being able to use the moderation, and then in your words, perhaps overeating or binging on those types of
Yeah, I
foods?
mean, it would work for, you know, sometimes up to a year, where it felt easy, you know, having a moderate piece or amount of that kind of food worked, and it didn't feel like restricting, it didn't feel difficult in any way. So it, you know, it worked until it didn't, and until the mechanisms, you know, that I know now, your physiology changes, all the hunger hormones increase, all of that kind of stuff. You know, your body sensing that it's sensing the restriction and understanding or fearing that there's a famine coming, and so does everything to kind of protect you and get you back to you know, to eating, and all of that would kick in. And it was just it was a really despairing time when that would happen, the I don't know, refeeding or the extreme hunger. And I just didn't understand why it was happening.
What made you reach out? So you tried loads of different things in the past, of
Yeah,
course, and you got to this
yeah,
point where moderation wasn't even working.
yeah,
What did make you reach out to get
yeah,
support?
sure. Um, I think it was the realization that I mean, I'd done some research and reading about the idea of weight set point theory, and you know, binge eating disorder, and the ways to manage that, or the ways to heal from that. So I had a bit of an idea as to the alternative way, or the right way, or the real way for me anyway, to recover from this cycle. Um, and so it just kind of felt right. I'd reached a point in my life where I was just like, look, Iruka, you cannot keep doing this, going through this same cycle. Even moderate restriction isn't working, or, you know, isn't right for you. So you just can't do the same thing again. You have to do something else. Um, so yeah, that, even though I've had a bit of that realization before, I've never truly felt it in my bones.
Mm.
And that's why I kind of always say that, you've got to be ready. There's just, it's so hard to know. You've just got to feel it. You've just got to be ready. And it takes many cycles, and people are ready at different times. But until you're at that point, it's, nothing's going to change.
I agree with that. The amount of times I even hired a coach, got so far, and then was
Mm.
like, yeah, well, I'll just micro diet because now I'm better around food. If I can just lose a bit of,
Yeah,
like, I've been there
yeah,
and done
yeah.
that. It
Yeah,
doesn't
I know,
work.
I know. But it's nice actually to know, I kind of feel solid in that realization that I just can't do that again. I won't
Mm,
do that again because that just does not work for me.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, that kind of solid knowledge is really helpful.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
What's probably so many things you've learned through this process, but what are the
Mm.
one or two to three things that really stand out that you feel like, wow, that's had a massive impact on this
Mm.
journey?
Yeah, sure. Um, I think one of the biggest is that in order to stop binging, you've got to stop restricting.
Mm,
Um, and even though I've known it on some level, I've never truly known it, because people always focus on the binging.
yeah,
Let me stop binging, let me try and control what I'm eating, or reduce what I'm eating, i.e., stop binging.
yeah.
And you don't realize that the binge is in reaction to restriction. So you've got to sort of put your focus there and actually eat more, or eat often enough, or just eat essentially. And initially unrestrictedly, and whatever you want and however you want, and then naturally it kind of settles into a pattern for you, and the binging just goes away. The
Mm,
urges, you know the despair around it all just magically disappears. But only when you stop restricting, only when you
yes,
truly stop restricting.
yeah.
And that's magic. That really is. It's a really powerful realization, a powerful tool. But you've got, it's only once you really get that
Mm,
does the binging
it
stop. And
stop.
yeah,
Yeah.
often you don't. Often one doesn't get that, or people don't get that. Um, so that is probably the most important realization that I came to, or have come to. Um, a second is, I think, yeah, recovery doesn't look the way I always thought it would look. Um, which is why I know I'm in recovery, if
Mm,
that makes sense. Because I
yes.
used to think I was dieting moderately or restricting moderately, that this was recovery because I wasn't binging then. But when I compare how I am now to how I was then, I can see that this is true recovery. And it's hard to articulate the difference.
Is it how you feel about what you eat or don't eat now in comparison to how you used to feel about what you ate or not ate?
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, that's definitely part of it. It's what I'm eating as well,
Mm-hmm.
without the judgment, the broad spectrum, the broad variety, um, without concern, not concern, um, and just the broad mix of what I'm eating, across the board, and how the healthy food, or the food that would be considered the type of stuff that you should eat all the time, how it's delicious and how your body wants it, and how you're naturally drawn to it, and that's a lovely feeling. But
Mm,
equally, the fun foods, the foods that would have been a no-no, or only in moderation, um during those days are also part of part of your diet, or part of your daily, or whatever, part of the things that you eat, and it's all fine, it's all mixed together, and it all kind of balances out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Naturally,
So
without you
yeah.
try, because I think before, when you were like micro restricting and eating in moderation, there was that, well, I should have more vegetables and I shouldn't really have an extra donut. So even
Mm.
though you were eating all the foods and allowing them physically, would you say the difference where you are now compared to where you were is that full allowance mentally and emotionally of whatever amount, and then naturally it just happens to be balanced by itself?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And yes, and just what you said, mental restriction, that's the other thing that I never
Mm,
fully appreciated. Because I couldn't understand, even though I was eating, those foods in moderation, so I wasn't physically restricting them. There was the mental
mm,
stuff that was going on, and that's and that as well will trigger a binge. So you've got to address all of that kind of stuff to get rid of the binging,
yeah,
which I never fully. I remember there was something when I first approached you. I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you talked about mental restriction, and my goodness, it was just like a thunderbolt in terms of how it resonated with me.
mm,
It was incredible. When these things really click, everything changes.
it does. And I remember a big thing that changed for you when we first met, we had our consultation call, we started
Yeah.
coaching. There's two things that I'd like to bring up. One of them was how you spoke to yourself. You didn't think it was impossible because you were open and you came to
Mm.
coaching with an open mind, but you really struggled to understand how you could change the way you talk to yourself in terms of kindness, compassion. And you saw, if I remember correctly, I think you saw a change quite quickly with how you were treating yourself in your own head.
Mm. Yeah, I truly didn't believe that it was possible to be at this point where I'm at now. I just couldn't get my head round, because of, when you've tried
Yeah,
so many times, it's just so hard to believe that true recovery is possible. And so I lent very heavily on your faith. I remember, again, you'd written somewhere on your website, I get it. You probably don't believe that it's possible, and it's fine. I will believe enough for both of us, and
yes.
just trust the process, one step at a time. And I was just like, that's all I have at the moment, because I can't, even though I was hopeful,
Hmm.
obviously, why would I sign up and why would I
Yeah.
do it? But I didn't know how it was possible. I didn't know
Mm.
how it could be. Um, so it's about being ready. You've got to be ready to be open to the changes, but also having somebody, having an effective coach or effective process that teaches you the right stuff.
Yeah.
Because before, I've not told you this before, but before I found you or settled with you, um, there are a couple of other coaches who I, entertained or, contacted, and they weren't right. They still had a focus on, you can lose weight, with this
Mm.
process, and you get, that kind of, they're
Yeah.
not truly, they don't truly, can't
Get
explain what I'm
it?
trying to say.
Because there's me saying,
Yeah,
FYI, you might gain weight. You might lose
yeah,
weight. You might stay
yeah.
the same weight. I'm not going to bullshit you. Either of those things could happen, and
Mm.
that's the truth.
Or I think their goal was weight loss. They're
Yeah.
not necessarily recovery from an eating disorder, but their goal was weight loss, is which isn't always going to be the outcome if you recover.
Exactly.
And
And I
that,
love it's completely different, isn't it? Because this is Victoria's opinion, professionally and
yeah,
personally, any pursuit of any kind with the goal being weight loss is
mm,
restriction.
mm, yeah,
That's
in
how I
some
see
form or
it.
other. Has to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember
Yeah.
another thing at the beginning, you were afraid because you described to me that you'd gained weight from when you were younger and you were afraid of being delusional. You mentioned that word quite a lot of perhaps outside people looking in and
Yeah.
thinking, how can she be happy in her body and healthy? Health was a big thing for you. But
Yeah.
surely, Victoria, won't I just be being delusional? So we did a lot of work around that, didn't we? I don't know if you want to speak to how that's changed
Yeah,
for you.
sure. I think the concern I had then was, this is very unique way of thinking. People in we're in a bit of a bubble in terms of binge eating or eating disorder recovery, and
Mm,
uh, you know non-conventional ways of thinking about health and body size, and what it takes to be healthy.
yeah.
So yeah, that's where my concern came from. The idea that you can look like me and be healthy, whereas society would say that's not the case.
Mm,
So yeah, that's where my concern came from. I thought, am I being deluded in thinking that I'm healthy, even
mm,
though, I don't know, my BMI is, whatever the chart says it is, or it's, it would be in the overweight or obese category. Um, so yeah, that's where my concern came from, and it took a lot of researching, education, learning about Hayes, health at every size, learning about the fact that you can engage in health promoting behaviors, therefore
hmm
you can be healthy, and your weight may not change. So it was all of that was took some learning, um, and I'm aware of the fact that not wider society doesn't think that way.
Yeah.
And so it can be challenging sometimes because we're surrounded by it all day, every day. I experience it at work with patients, that just have that mindset of losing weight, or this is what it takes to be healthy,
Mm,
and all of that kind of thing. Uh, and I'm starting to feel steadier in my conviction about what I know to be true.
mm,
But it can be a challenge when everybody around you is still
mm.
in that headspace.
Yeah. Has it affected or changed perhaps how you help your patients with you being a doctor? Because I'm sure you get, this is just my assumption, a lot of
Mm.
people come to you with conditions that the majority of doctors might prescribe weight loss as a prescription to help the
Yeah.
problem. Like, have you
Yeah.
noticed how you've changed in terms of
Yeah.
your job?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, um, in a nutshell, it's removing the focus from weight loss and focusing on health promoting behaviors.
Mm,
So whatever the condition is, um, whatever the problem is, there are ways in which you can improve that problem by focusing on health promoting behaviors rather than weight loss. So I can tell my patients to try and eat more fruits and vegetables, to try and be more active, to move more. Those things may not result in weight loss,
mm,
but they are going to improve your health.
mm,
So that kind of one size fits all, just lose weight, is quite a lazy
mm.
solution to whatever the problem is. Because
Yeah.
that's not, that can't be the answer to everything. Just go away and lose weight. It's not
Well,
helpful to say.
also give me one safe way of losing
Yeah.
weight that actually works long
Yeah.
term. That's not going to fuck me up mentally and
Mhm.
physically because there
Yeah.
isn't one, right?
Yeah. 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 And I just think that it's more helpful to say the precise ways in which you can address an issue, rather
Mm,
than saying go and lose weight.
yes.
That's just not helpful.
Yeah.
If you're lacking in energy, if you're feeling sluggish, or if you're whatever, you can say eat more fruit and veg, eat more, exercise regularly, let's do this, let's do that, as opposed to the blanket lose weight, which is just not helpful at
Not
all.
helpful. Let's move on to exercise. Your relationship with exercise. You used to exercise 8 days a week, 9 hours a day. I'm exaggerating here, of course, but you
Yeah,
were doing
25.
a lot, and then you stopped and didn't want to do
Mm,
any, which,
mm,
of course, everything's like a pendulum. You go one way.
mm,
I believe naturally you have to go the other way before you come to a balance authentically yourself.
mm,
So
mm.
do you mind describing what that used to be like and then what
Sure,
it's like
yeah.
now?
Yeah, no, not at all. So yes, in my disordered days, I I think that the key thing was that I over exercised to the point of injury.
Yeah.
And sadly, there are some injuries that I sustained during those days that are still affecting me now. Um, so even though I enjoyed the exercise, that's always been a key thing for me to pick a form of exercising that is enjoyable. So I did enjoy it, but it was just too much. I was,
Mm.
wasn't focusing on recovery, wasn't focusing on flexibility or mobility, because that wouldn't burn any calories. What's the point of doing that? What's the point of
Yeah.
doing that? It's a waste of time. um, so that was my that was how I exercised in my disordered days. And then I had a period of rebellion in which I just kind of stopped. And I think it was a necessary period,
Yes.
uh in which I had to sort all of this out and figure out how I wanted to approach exercise moving forward. um and there was some initial resist no so there was about 3 months in which I wouldn't do anything apart from walking. And then there was some stirring, some feelings inside me, which I remember I kept bringing up with you.
Yeah.
I kept bringing up with you, um because there was something innately inside me that wanted to exercise, but I had some cognitive concerns or fears, um that I had to sort out with you. Um, and then I think I just like, look, Iruka, just come on, just get out of your head, and just do something.
Mm.
Um, and those old feelings of the enjoyment of exercise, the endorphin high, all of that kind of stuff, of feeling strong, of lifting something heavy, or showing or demonstrating what my body can do. I love all of that. But now my motivations for exercise are completely different.
Mm.
I'm mindful of the fact that I'm in my 40s. You become more aware of your mortality as you get older, and I want to live well into however long I
Let's go
live.
for 101.
Yeah, yeah, my husband wants to live to 100, oddly enough. Yeah,
There you
so
go.
however long I'm on this earth for, I want to live well. And I recognize that exercise will help me do that, being
Mm.
strong, not breaking a bone, not falling over, all of that kind of stuff. So that's what motivates me now, being
Mm.
strong, being flexible, being as healthy as I can be. um, and it's not about burning calories. It's not about looking a certain way. It's not about tracking or any of that. Sorry, I was gonna. Can I swear? It's not about any of
Yes.
that.
I mean, you know me.
Yeah,
Come
yeah.
on.
No, I just couldn't remember. It's not about any of that bullshit, quite frankly, which is all short-termist and temporary, and external. Um,
Mm.
this is about what feels good inside. Um, so that's what motivates me now. And it's so enjoy. I love exercising. The way in which, or the exercise that I do. just I find really fun. The music is brilliant.
Mm.
So I'm lucky in that way, in that I do enjoy it and that I want to do it. I just needed to sort out uh, my motivations for it
I love how you
before I.
use the word external and internal,
Yeah,
because that's huge. What's your
yeah,
relationship with food like now?
yeah, yeah. Good, 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 good. It's I love food. I love food. I love food. I always have. So I enjoy food. I eat when I'm hungry. I don't. I eat till I'm satisfied. Uh, I eat a wide variety of foods. I love vegetables. I love cake. I love, it's just all the spectrum of food.
Mm,
Um, I notice how certain foods make me feel, and I use that to guide whether I want to eat them again or not.
mm,
And surprise, surprise, the stuff that I used to binge on, when I eat it now, I just, it's just, it's trash to me in terms of how it feels to me. Not
mm,
everything. Um, but, I just think, what was going on then where, and I know it's not about the food, but it's just an interesting observation eating those foods now, and they just don't feel good. I don't like to eat them, and I don't have to eat, I don't want to, and that's
mm,
fine. There are other things to find. Um, so, how I taste food is different now because the noise or the disorder has cleared a bit. And yeah, there's no compulsion. There's
mm,
no desire to over consume or to eat past the point of satisfaction, or much past the point if
mm.
something's very delicious, of course. But
Yes.
all those drivers that were there before are not there anymore. And so it's wonderful just to be with food,
Mm.
just to
Love
be.
that. Before I ask you the next question, do you have perhaps 5 or 10 minutes after the hour? If not, I'll make sure I'm asking you questions that can be answered within 10 minutes.
Yes, of course. Do
Okay,
you mean,
great.
can we go past 2 o'clock? Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I didn't even realize. Goodness,
I
time
know.
flies.
Time flies when you're having
Sorry,
fun,
I'm
right?
chatting too much.
Not, no,
Yeah.
it's so valuable. And my next question is, how is your relationship with with your body now? And how was
Mm,
it? Because I've not actually asked you specifically about how
mm,
you felt and now feel in the body you have.
sure. Um, I think that's the area that still needs a bit of work.
Hmm.
Um, in that the way I feel about my body now is light years better than it was, but it's still not 100% entirely positive. Um, and I know why. It's because my body um, doesn't sort of fit the beauty standard,
Mm.
that society sets. Um, so there is uh, that disappointment
Mm.
that this recovery hasn't, my body hasn't kind of fit into that beauty standard.
Yeah.
Um, and I give myself grace and compassion for feeling that way. It's understandable that I would feel that way considering the society that we live in.
Yes.
um I don't think that's, and I think as long as society is the way it is, there will probably always be that slight feeling there, slight, but in terms of how big that feeling is, it's not massive. And and the other part of, sometimes I kind of I feel sad in that I wish that I'd recovered 10 years ago or
Mm.
15 years ago and hadn't had 15 years of diet cycle or weight cycling, because as you weight cycle, your weight just goes up and up and
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So I wish I'd recovered so many years ago and recovered into a smaller body, shall we say.
Yeah.
But then part of me also recognizes that, even if I had recovered that, my body still would have changed in that 15 years. So I
Yes.
have to accept that I'm getting older. I'm never going to look the way I did, or I've had children. I'm never going to look the way I did all those years ago. And that's normal. That's
Mm.
okay. And you need to accept that. Otherwise, you're um, rejecting or denying getting older, which
Yes.
is inevitable, which all of us are going to do. And that's crazy to do that. So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
And also,
That's where I'm
when
at.
we don't accept our bodies, because of course, acceptance doesn't have to mean approval, but acceptance means neutrality. It is what it is.
Mm, mm,
Focusing on actually, I've gained weight and I've gained all these other things in
mm,
recovery. When we're
mm,
not able to accept our bodies, that actually is a form of restriction emotionally, and then also usually does then create a reaction in terms of what your behaviors around food might be, because there's
mm,
that constant, I need to be
mm,
thinner, I wish I was thinner. And yeah, there's a difference between having that on your mind quite often, especially when you're eating, than if a
mm,
magic fairy came around with a wand and said, Iruka, would you like to be thinner? No
mm.
consequences whatsoever, a magic wave of my wand and you'd be thinner. That's, in
Yeah.
my opinion, it like a fairy coming along and saying, would you like to be a billionaire with a wave of,
Mm.
like, who wouldn't want
Who
that,
wouldn't? Yeah, sure. Yes, exactly. You can't have it without the disorder. So
That's it.
therefore, no thanks.
Yes. It's that, it's like every single thing in life has a cost and a gain, doesn't it? And
Mm,
the
mm,
cost at the beginning of recovery, this was my experience anyway, with I did gain weight. The
mm,
cost felt quite big. It was still worth it with everything I gained or was gaining. But
yeah.
where I'm at now, and perhaps from what you've shared, perhaps a little bit where you are, that cost isn't as, it doesn't feel as big now as it did when you made
Mm,
that decision of like, right, I'm going to go forward with recovery. And then these things might happen as a consequence of that.
mm. Yeah, I think, I mean, the issue for me is that I haven't gained weight at all during recovery, but that's what I'm having to come to terms with, that most likely this is, the body that I'm supposed to be in
Mm,
for now. Um, and so that I've had to come to acceptance of that. Thankfully,
yeah.
I've not because I can imagine that would be a whole other thing to deal with, gaining weight. Um, but what I found is that I thought my weight would reduce once all the binging stopped and all of that kind of stuff stopped. Um, and so it's just the realization and the coming to terms with the fact that this is the body that I'm meant to be in.
Yes. What was your favorite part about coaching or and the process?
I think it was just like I should love it was like having a wonderful fairy godmother cheerleader in my corner at all times. It was the WhatsApp messaging, the voice notes,
Mm.
um, which I had access to your support, and
Mm.
um, I had access to your support and love at any time. Um, I remember, particularly in the beginning, more than more than daily, several times throughout the day. Um, all my indecision, all my despair, all my questions and confusion, and you were just there, um, just the um, steady guiding support. And that really helped anchor me.
Mm.
And I didn't know what the hell was going on. Um, so that hands down was was the most helpful um, part of this process. Just having access to you at all times of the day.
Mm.
I really, really valued that. Sorry, so
Oh my
cry.
goodness knows. We know we don't apologize for tears, Queen Iruka.
I know, yeah.
It's beautiful, and thank you for sharing that. And whilst from the subject of me, how would you describe me to a stranger in 3 words?
Oh, unwaveringly supportive, just solidly in your corner. Um, that would be one. Uh, unconditionally loving would
Mm-hmm.
be the second. And three would be irreverent and funny and swears. I just love the fact that just the way you would describe stuff that is bullshit and that is rubbish. You'd just be like, fuck that stuff. That's exactly how I feel. So those would be my three main descriptors of you.
I'm tearing up now. Thank you. What would you say to someone who has listened to our conversation so far
Yeah.
and really resonates with your journey and they want what you have now, but they're doubting whether it can work for them? You know how, we
Yeah,
doubt
sure.
ourselves. From you instead of me as the coach, what
Mm,
words would you share with this person?
sure. Um, I would say you need to be ready. You need to really be ready to let go of the idea of changing your body,
Mm,
or wanting really got to let go of that in order for recovery to allow recovery. Um, and so if you're secretly thinking that this process, will cause change in the body, it's just not going to work, and it's a waste of your time and money. Um, so I think that's the key. That's the main message. Um, yeah, and I think be prepared for to feel to be prepared for people around you, potentially family or friends, to not necessarily understand
mm,
what's going on for you, or understand this new way of thinking that you're coming to terms with or embracing. And that can be challenging, which is why it's really helpful to have um you know a professional, somebody that knows what they're talking about, somebody um that gets it in your corner, because it can be difficult to navigate this when people around you who are in that kind of conventional way of thinking um are saying something that kind of goes
triggering.
against, yeah, yeah, that goes against what you're learning. um yeah, those would probably be the two. But the last one would be that it is entirely worth it.
Mm.
um it's an investment, yes, to have Victoria in the way that I had her. Of course, it's an investment, but it is, you will reap the benefits tenfold. What it recovery, what it allows, what it opens up for you.
Mm.
um is yeah, is unimaginable. It's so worth it.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Iruka. How do you feel?
Oh goodness, bit of a crybaby today. Yeah, I feel good. I'm glad I did this. I know I was reluctant. My initial reaction when you asked me was, God, no, no, I can't imagine doing this, and other people seeing it and that kind of thing. But um, this is my truth. I feel secure and happy in who I am and what I am now. So I have no issues with speaking that into the world.
And I'm so grateful that you have. So thank you so much for sharing. And I've said this to you before, and I'll share it with the listeners. They would have heard me say it before too. But your story has the keys to unlock someone else's chains.
Yeah, I hope it does. Yeah, that would be awesome if somebody else sees this and it resonates with them and it pushes them a little bit further towards this happy place. I know it doesn't look like I'm very happy, but as I said, it's so worth it. Yeah, so highly encourage people to do as I did.
Thank you. And
Thank
listeners
you.
and YouTube watchers, if you have got something from this episode, let us know. Reach out to me, tag me. I can share with Iruka, of course, the feedback we're having, because it's so nice to know that we're making a difference to others. So please share with us how you feel about this episode. And Iruka, thank you so much for your time and for
Pleasure.
sharing. And I love
Thank
you
you.
so much. And it's so,
Love
so
you
nice
too.
to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks, Victoria.
Of course, you're
Lots of love.
welcome. And listeners, I will see you next week. Bye bye.